Hello, and I'm here today to interview the host of the Libyan Dialogue channel, Dr. Aziz Dor. Thank you very much for having me here today, Doctor.
It's my pleasure, thank you.
I'd like to start by asking you about the term Arab Spring. The Arab Spring starting with the uprising in Tunisia, leading to the uprising in Egypt with the ousting of President Mubarak and his now very public court appearances. In Libya, the NTC has swept across the country, ousting Gaddafi's outposts, eventually taking the capital Tripoli before taking Gaddafi himself. And now President Assad in Syria never seems to be out of the news headlines. So what do you think of the Arab Spring?
Arab Spring, it's a term has been formed by a major media player like Al Jazeera and so on. In my humble opinion, it's not a spring, it's a summer and very hot summer. As a result, we're seeing today there is an economic and political chaos in both in Tunisia and Egypt, whereas in Syria and Libya there is a victims, and as you can see in Libya we lost about 60,000 lives in this conflict, and the country still in chaos, and the country being now controlled by armed militia.
So just wait a minute now. So we're now talking about the situation in Libya post the rebel takeover, post the conflict. So let's talk about law and order. Has law and order now been restored within the streets?
In the street in Libya, actually, the law there's no law and order. Actually, it's militia law, and all the detainees center, as you can, is held by a militia, and as United Nations reports and Amnesty report, Human Rights Watch report, saying there's about 9,000 people held in those detainees centers who's holding and controlled by militia. Those militia actually today they are fighting in West Libya between three cities, Zwara and Rigdalin and Ijmail cities. And last 2 weeks, those militia been fighting with each other in South Libya, in a city called Sabha, who's control the country. And who's losing the life? It's the ordinary people who losing their lives and their properties.
Okay, Doctor. I'd just like to interrupt you there. There's a couple of questions that are on the forefront of my mind. Firstly, judicial system, say a trial, police officers. I mean, we're talking about militia here as well. Who are these militia? I mean, are we talking pro-Gaddafi versus anti-Gaddafi? Who are these militia?
Is actually those militias is the tribal and cities militias and different new political militias. Pro-Gaddafi actually is out of picture nowadays in Libya, and most of them they are refugee in neighbors countries, and a lot of people, a lot of them they are out. But who's the controlling the country? It's the militia who is not obeying the NTC orders, and they do their own political motivations order. If we take example Tripoli being controlled by three major militia, despite the smallest militia. One is controlled by Islamic extremist militia. The head of them is called Belhaj, and the other tribal militia was Zintan militia, and the other cities militia called Misrata militia. Those three militias, they are now controlling the capital. The law and order actually in their hand. Until this point, there is no court being ordered to reopen again. So there's no law and order in the country. Those kind of militia, even in the other cities, even in Far East or Far South or in the middle or thing on the south, all this militia, because in the Libyan National Army, all the stores of weapons in the Libyan National Army being opened and being vandalized and ripped off by those kind of militia and those kind of peoples. And they took over the guns and the weapons, and they're controlling the streets. We heard stories about people being in the middle of the day, they stand out, they took their cars from their hands. So it's a quite terrible situation. It seems to
But
really
aren't the NTC tackling these militias? Surely they must be tackling these militias.
No, because the NTC doesn't hold the ground. The NTC just doing an orders and nobody obeying the NTC, because the NTC it's just a transitional government, so nobody obeyed them. Now many political differences has appeared on the surface now, and each one, either in the NTC or the government of the NTC, they are now working with their political interest rather than a Libyan national interest. That's why no militia being went to the internal security services or being went to the Libyan National Army. So that's the problem.
So in your personal opinion, in your personal view, I mean, how do you think this problem can be solved of law and order within Libya?
First of all, we need each other to recognize all Libyan people. They need to recognize each other. That means all the political differences, we need to put them aside and stand together to rebuild the country. And then we need first to enforce law and order by doing one national army, doing law and order to the country. Then we, without expel any part of Libya. Nowadays, they are exploring pro-Gaddafi and with the NTC, whereas we need both of parties and a lot of other parties sit around the table of negotiation, solve the differences, and build the country. That's what most of the Libyan professional and normal citizen want. They don't want the country running by another one party view.
So you are in favor of a democratic society?
Of course, every Libyan citizen would like to have a democratic society in Libya, whereas there is a choice for them, not by controlling them and force them to have you rather than to have others. If we are willing to build the country, if the international community willing to help us to build our country, they should put enough pressure either on the NTC, because the NTC now is a major player, at least in the media and in every way and every international talks. And even they can put also the international community enough pressure on those militia in the ground to let the country run democracy and without any expel to any part of the Libyan peoples, and to enforce law and order. Without law and order, there's no country anymore.
So we're talking about conflicts happening within Libya at the moment. So which areas now are hot zones of conflict?
many areas. And nowadays, it's actually in Swara and in Rigdalin and in Jmail.
So we're talking north, east, west, south?
It's actually in west side, in a border of Tunisia. This fighting been now for almost 3 or 4 days. People lost their lives there. A lot of casualty there. Also, last week they were fighting in Sabha between two militia, and also there is a fight, not a fighting actually. It's East Misrata is wiped out, a village called Tawarga nearby them, because they tagged them as a pro-Gaddafi and used to be working with the Gaddafi army. So they came over and they wiped them out. Almost 30,000 people being refugee in a different cities in Libya from their village, and their village property all being destroyed to the ground. And obviously, the international media who talk about all these kind of conflict around the world doesn't report enough about those kind of things happen in Libya right now.
Do you personally believe that reconciliation is an option for Libya now, given, what's happened within the past year? Do you think that people can put aside their differences and essentially move on to build a better Libya, to forge a future?
We know it's very hard decision to make, but we should do it, because if we didn't do it, Libya is never be in a rest. Otherwise, reconciliation, we know we lost enough lives. We lost our country until now. Country is in a static state now. There's no development going there. Even a normal life doesn't restore very well. Without reconciliation, without acceptance our differences, reconciliate every single life being lost in Libya should treat the same. Every city is being destroyed during this war, from Sirte to Misrata, should be rebuilt again from zero. Otherwise, if we still talking about that, Sirte is a pro-Gaddafi city, and we shouldn't build that country, or so we shouldn't give that kind of people a power. We didn't give them the right to election. It's very unwise decision, and it will carry the country from bad to worse. Otherwise, we need to reconciliate. We need people with enough encouragement, with brave enough to bring all those Libyans. And the major player in this one, it's actually the international community.
Thank you, Dr. Dor, for your time today. It's evident that you would like a peaceful, solution to the events which are happening in Libya, and I hope that that happens in the future. I would just like to say that if there are any people listening in the media here who would like to interview Dr. Dor, he's been on several major news networks. Please leave a comment below and he will get back to you. So again, thank you very much for having me here today, Dr. Dor, and goodbye.
Marvelous, thank you.